Hallo, willkommen zurück in der Deutschklasse. Ich bin Ihr Professor, Herr Dr. Professor Michael Hughes, und wir lernen hier bei Cal State San Marcos. Das Thema unseres Gesprächs heute ist das Präteritum. Hello, welcome back to the German class. I'm Professor Dr. Michael Hughes, and our topic of discussion today is the preterite tense in German. So let's first talk a little bit about reminding ourselves that tense is just time reference that's grammaticized, right? Typically, you might have past, present, future. English, in particular, nor German really has a tense that's the future. That's because in English we use two words to do it, right? We don't have a suffix that attaches right onto the verb to do it. So we use a modal verb, or we use this go into construction, right? He'll go, or he's gonna go, something like that. Like I said, just because it's not a suffix, it's a compound thing. It's not technically a tense. It doesn't really matter. Right? But anyway, if we were going to talk about it as a tense, we'd have something like, it will fly, it will be flying, it will have flown, and it will have been flying. Right? And see, you're going to see this. We're going to have the same pattern in all of the other tenses too. We're going to go through those really quickly. Right? Right. It will. Will be flying. Right. Progressive, or also called continuous, at the moment, or moment of observation. Let's say here. Right. By the time we get there, it will already have flown. Right. So this is a relative tense with, something farther in the future as the relative point, and then we have the same thing just combined together. Right. Perfect and progressive. In the present tense, she walks. She is walking, right? Again, continuous or pregnant. Right? So there's she walks and is walking. She walks to school every morning. It's just a true thing, right? You could say that any time of day. She doesn't have to be doing it at the moment. She's walking to school right now, right? That would be a case of what's happening at the moment of speaking. She has walked to school in the past, but typically she takes the bus, right? So something that it happened in the past but is relevant to the present. This is called present perfect. Right, and you recognize this also with das perfect. And why is it called present perfect? Because it feels to us like this is talking about something that happened in the past. And that's kind of true, right? In English, this has a particular relevance to the present, right? As opposed to she walked, she has walked. Says something, is ongoing or continuing up to now, or in the state of having done something like that. The other reason it's called present perfect is because the auxiliary verb it have is in the present tense, right? And we can change it will have walked, right, to the future, or had walked to the past if we want to. And then we can combine them both, right? She has been walking now for an hour, and something like that. Okay, and then the past tense, right? Which the preterite in English, you could call it preterite. Most of the people just call it the simple past, but you can call it the preterite. She was walking, right? Past progressive or past continuous, if you prefer that terminology. She had walked, past perfect. And again, we'll notice here we have the verb have now is in the past, right? And this is a relative tense as well. So by the time you got there, she had already walked 5 miles, something like that. Right, and we can combine them again to had been walking. Okay, so now let's take a quick look at the simple past versus the present perfect. Right, so the present perfect, as you're aware, right, is the one that we use in German all the time, and it's just have plus the past participle. Past participle in English typically ends in ed, but doesn't have to, right? You have stuff like been or seen or gone. Lots and lots of different irregular past participles in English, and that's true in German too. You just have to learn them. Right? See is an example of one of those. Right, so compare, we've seen the movie, they've eaten all of the sausages, and she hasn't paid the bill yet. Right? This is let's pay attention to that third sentence in just a minute. So let's look in the simple past, right? We saw the movie. So again, we've already seen that movie. Let's see something else. Right, you're talking about something that happened in the past, but it has more relevance to the present conversation than just, we saw the movie, or we saw that movie. Right? And then they ate all of the sausages, and then she didn't pay the bill. Notice it's really hard to say yet here in this sentence, right? You can say she hasn't paid the bill yet, right, because it's relevant to the present. She didn't pay the bill yet. It's okay, but it seems a little bit less felicitous to me. You be the judge. Okay, in spoken German, mostly we use the present perfect to talk about the past, with some exceptions, right? And we'll talk about those a little bit more at the end of this chat, right? So, ich habe schon gegessen could be translated into two ways. It either means I've already eaten or I already ate. And you have to figure that out based on context, right? Either one of those would be a fine translation of, fine English translation of that sentence based on what's going on in the world. But you can't tell just by looking at it, right? Same in English, or sorry, excuse me, the present, simple present tense. Ist viele Würste either means he's eating a lot of sausage right now, or he eats a lot of sausage in general. There is no present progressive in German. You can't say ist essend. That doesn't work. It's not a real form in German. Okay, now let's move on to das Präteritum, right? The preterite, or in English, a simple past tense. Usually use das Präteritum in written language, so it's much more common in newspaper articles and textbooks, in novels and things like that, and potentially even like news, even orally, like a formal presentation, like a news report or something like that. And it's also more common in northern Germany in spoken language than in southern Germany, but it's still less common than das Perfekt. Some of these, some verbs, in particular, war, right, the past tense of be, hatte, the past tense of haben, right, to have, ging, the past tense of go, and then the modal verbs, right, müssen, können, dürfen, sollen, und so weiter. Those are typically going to be in das Präteritum in everyday speech, and not typically. It's possible. Ich habe gehabt, ich habe ist gewesen, ist gegangen, right? You can get them both, but these also occur frequently in spoken language in the preterite, so you can learn those and use those. Okay, okay. Stark oder schwach, strong verbs change their stem vowel, right? So we've seen those. We have those in English, right? Like saw, see, saw, seen, right? Where the stem vowel changes. We have a weird past participle, right? Ich singe, right? I sing, I sang, I sung. It's a strong verb in English too. Ich singe. Ich habe gesungen, right? So we go from I to and then ich sang, right? So we have basically three different roots for that verb, right? So strong verbs will have one or two different roots. Again, they're not the most common one. It's more common to be a weak verb, but the strong verbs are very common, and so you need to learn what they are. Okay, weak verbs just add the suffix to, right? So ich mache, ich habe gemacht, and ich machte. Right? Ich machte, ich sagte, ich dachte. Right? That te just goes at the end of the default suffix for the past tense. Okay, why do we need to learn the past tense forms? Well, as you know, it's just a common form, but it's important for more efficient reading. And then it's also the basis for the subjunctive form, right? So if I had that, I would have done, right? So ich hatte means I had. Ich hätte means I would have, or something like that. And it's super common if you go into a store or a restaurant or something like that, and they say, "What would you like?" You could say something. Ich hätte gern ein Brötchen, right? I'd love to have a bread roll or something like that. Ich hätte gern ein Bier, right? I'd love to have a beer, please, something like that, right? So it softens things, and it makes it more into the realm of possibility instead of absolute fact. Okay, werden is the same thing, right? Ich würde means I became. Ich würde means I would do something. Das würde ich nicht machen. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Wenn ich dich wäre, würde ich das nicht machen, right? If I were you, I wouldn't do that. Wenn ich dich wäre, würde ich das nicht machen, right? So subjunctive forms, right? Okay. Here are our top 25 most common German verbs and their principal parts, right? So here we have, right, the infinitive form, the preterite form in the third person preterite, and then the past participle, right? So sein war gewesen, haben hatte gehabt, werden würde geworden. Notice, right, here we have no umlauts on these. With no umlauts, those are just going to be regular indicative. If we stick an umlaut, wäre, hätte, würde, right, now we're in the subjunctive territory. We're not going to worry about that today. Don't worry about it, right? Ging, gegangen with gehen, kommen, kam, gekommen, machen, machte, gemacht, right? So here with haben, really this is our first weak verb showing up. Geben, gab, gegeben, nehmen, nahm, genommen, sehen, sah, gesehen. Do you guys know all these words? Hopefully you know the English translations of these, right? So be, have, become, go, come or arrive, make or do, give, take, see, finden, fand, gefunden. Again, see, so far we only have one weak verb. Bleiben, blieb, geblieben. Excuse me, to stay. Bringen, brachte, gebracht. Denken, dachte, gedacht. And so those are mixed verbs. They're kind of irregular, but not super irregular. Wissen, wusste, gewusst. Kennen, kannte, gekannt. Sprechen, sprach, gesprochen. Right? So know as in wisdom, be familiar with and speak. Essen, to eat, essen, aß, gegessen, trinken, trank, getrunken, fahren, für, gefahren, laufen, lief, gelaufen, arbeiten, arbeitete, gearbeitet, right? Okay, again, we have to get down another 20 spaces before we get to another weak verb, right? Spielen, spielte, gespielt, another weak verb. Kaufen, kaufte, gekauft. Right now we finally cracked the weak verb level, right? Fragen, fragte, gefragt. And wohnen, wohnte, gewohnt, right? So again, laufen to run or to walk, arbeiten to work, spielen to play, kaufen to buy, fragen to ask, and wohnen to reside. Okay, so these are the ones you're going to need to learn. This you can look on the website. There's a list of the top 40. You're going to want to go and check those out, and then as you read, right, you're going to notice and take note and try to add your vocabulary that way too. Some verbs are typically used in the preterite, right? So the modal verbs. So don't disregard the stuff on the right for now. Dürfen, right? The past tense, right? So may or be allowed to. Dürfte, right? I was allowed to. I was permitted to do something. Ich konnte das machen. I was able to do something. Ich mochte. I liked doing it. Ich musste das machen. I had to do it. Ich sollte das machen. I should or should have done it. Ich wollte das machen means I wanted to do it. Right? And again, so you'll notice, right? The ones that allow umlauts are going to have an umlaut in the plural of the present tense, like wir dürfen, ihr dürft, sie dürfen. Ich darf, du darfst, er darf, not in the singular. And then they lose the umlaut in the past tense. And then if you want to use the subjunctive form, then you add the umlauts back on again where you can, right? You can't add an umlaut. You don't add an umlaut down here. So then, right, if I was able to, I would go. Right? If I were allowed to, wenn ich dürfte, würde ich gehen. Wenn ich konnte, würde ich gehen. Wenn ich möchte. And you'll see möchte as, you've probably heard that. Was möchtest du, what would you like, right? Okay, well, we're not talking about the subjunctive. I'm just pointing that out, that the umlauts with the past tense form indicate subjunctive. Okay, bringing it all together, there's two ways to talk about the past in German, das Perfekt und das Präteritum, so the difference between wir haben gelernt und wir lernten. The perfect is more, das Perfekt is more common in spoken context, das Präteritum more common in written context. Most verbs in German are weak and just take the suffix to, but strong ones and most of the really, really common ones are going to be strong, which means they have either a different stem vowel or a different suffix, like an en, right? Like instead of ed in English, you get an en, or potentially both, right? So you just have to learn which ones those are. Fortunately, they're common, so they're not that hard to remember and learn. And then modal verbs, haben and sein, are frequently used in the preterite, even in spoken context, right? So both in spoken and written context. Okay, I think that gives us a pretty good idea of how to use the simple past tense in German. And what you need to do. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. Either message me through Canvas or email me at mhughes@csusm.edu. Auf Wiedersehen.